When you hear the name Genghis Khan, you probably picture a monster, a ruthless warlord who swept across Asia on horseback, burning cities to the ground and leaving a trail of absolute destruction in his wake. And look, you wouldn't be entirely wrong. But what if I told you that the man who built the largest contiguous land empire in human history, an empire covering roughly 12 million square miles, about the size of the entire African continent, started out with absolutely nothing? The frantic war footage cuts abruptly to a lonely, freezing Mongolian steppe, a single young boy shivering in the snow. Just the sound of howling, bitter wind. Before he was Genghis Khan, he was just a kid named Temujin. He wasn't born into a palace. He wasn't handed a crown. He was a boy who was abandoned, enslaved, and forced to eat field mice just to survive. This isn't just a story about conquest. This is a story about a kid who was pushed to the absolute edge of human endurance, and instead of breaking, he decided to break the world instead. Our story starts around 1162, near the border of modern-day Mongolia and Siberia. According to legend, Temujin came into this world clutching a solid blood clot in his tiny right hand. In Mongolian culture, that was a heavy omen. It meant the boy was destined to be a great warrior, but destiny didn't do him any favors early on. His father, Yesugei, was a local clan chief. When Temujin was just 9 years old, his father was poisoned by a rival clan, the Tatars, during a banquet. Suddenly, Temujin's family was highly vulnerable. In the brutal politics of the 12th century steppe, nobody wanted to feed a dead chief's widow and her 7 kids. So Temujin's own clan abandoned them. They literally packed up their tents and rode off, leaving a woman and her children to freeze and starve in the harsh Mongolian winter. For years, they lived in absolute poverty. They foraged for wild roots, fished in frozen rivers, and hunted small rodents. It was a ruthless fight for survival, and survival meant making impossible choices. When Temujin was a young teenager, food was so scarce that a dispute broke out over a hunting kill. His older half-brother, Better, started hoarding the food. Temujin didn't complain to his mother. Instead, he and his other brother stalked Better through the grass and killed him with a bow and arrow to secure his position as the head of the household. It was a cold, calculated move, but things were about to get worse. Hearing that Temujin was becoming a problem, the very clan that had abandoned his family returned. They captured him, put him in a wooden collar, and enslaved him. For months, he was treated like an animal, but Temujin was patient. One night during a feast, he used the heavy wooden collar around his neck to knock out his guard, hid in a river, and finally escaped. The boy who had been left for dead was officially done being the victim. By the time he was 16, Temujin had started to build a reputation. He was fiercely loyal to those who helped him, and absolutely merciless to those who crossed him. Around 1178, he married his childhood betrothed, Borte. For a brief moment, it looked like Temujin might just settle down into a normal life on the steppe. Spoiler alert, he didn't. Shortly after their wedding, an enemy tribe called the Merkits raided Temujin's camp. In the chaos, Borte was kidnapped. This was actually a revenge attack. Temujin's father had stolen his mother from the Merkits decades earlier. Most men in this era would have just written it off and found a new wife. But Temujin wasn't most men. He went to a powerful local leader named Togrul and his own childhood blood brother, a brilliant warrior named Jamuka. Using his sheer charisma, Temujin convinced them to lend him an army. They rode down on the Merkits like a storm, completely crushing the tribe and rescuing Borte. This victory put Temujin on the map. Warriors started leaving their own chiefs to follow him. Why? Because Temujin did something completely revolutionary. In a society obsessed with aristocratic bloodlines, Temujin didn't care who your dad was. If you were brave and loyal, he promoted you. He also implemented a strict rule. Absolutely no looting until the battle was completely won, and the spoils had to be shared equally, even with the widows and orphans of fallen soldiers. He was essentially building a meritocracy on horseback. But this new way of doing things caused a massive rift. The old-school aristocrats hated him, and worst of all, his best friend and blood brother, Jamuka, turned against him. What followed was a brutal civil war that lasted for years. Jamuka was a traditionalist. Temujin was an innovator. Temujin completely restructured his army, breaking the traditional tribal groups and mixing everyone together in units of 10, 100, and 1,000. This destroyed old tribal loyalties and created a unified, disciplined military machine. By 1205, Temujin had defeated all of his rivals, including Jamuka, who was executed. In 1206, a massive council of the tribes was held. There, Temujin was given a new title, Genghis Khan, which roughly translates to the universal ruler. The Mongols were finally united, but Genghis Khan knew that if he didn't give this new, massive army an external enemy, they would eventually go back to fighting each other. So he looked south, toward China. The Mongols first targeted the Xisha kingdom, and then the powerful Jin dynasty of northern China. The Jin emperor actually demanded that Genghis Khan submit to him. Big mistake. From 1211 to 1214, the Mongols absolutely ravaged the countryside. Now you have to understand how the Mongols fought. They didn't have slow, lumbering supply trains. They traveled with a massive herd of horses, living entirely off the land. Every soldier was a cavalryman, capable of riding for days and shooting arrows with deadly accuracy while at a full gallop. They besieged the Jin capital, modern-day Beijing, forcing the emperor to hand over massive amounts of gold, silver, and silk. But Genghis Khan's most terrifying campaign actually happened by accident. In 1219, he wanted to open up trade with the Khwarezmian Empire, a massive, wealthy Islamic state in present-day Iran and Central Asia. He sent a peaceful trade caravan. The local governor stole the goods and killed the merchants. Genghis Khan, trying to be diplomatic, sent 3 ambassadors to the Sultan to demand justice. The Sultan responded by shaving the heads of 2 ambassadors and cutting off the head of the 3rd. You do not kill Genghis Khan's messengers. Genghis unleashed the full fury of the Mongol war machine. He didn't just defeat the Khwarezmian Empire, he erased it from the map. He diverted rivers to flood cities, used captured engineers to build advanced siege weapons, and slaughtered millions. It was a campaign of psychological warfare and unmatched brutality. By the time Genghis Khan returned to Mongolia in 1225, he controlled territory stretching from the Sea of Japan all the way to the Caspian Sea. But his time was running out. In 1227, while finishing off a rebellion in China, he was thrown from his horse and suffered massive internal injuries. He pushed through the pain to finish the campaign, but his health failed him. He died in August of 1227. According to legend, the soldiers carrying his body back to Mongolia killed every single living thing they crossed on the journey to keep his burial site a secret. To this day, his final resting place has never been found. Genghis Khan is one of history's ultimate paradoxes. Yes, his invasions resulted in the deaths of untold millions, but he also created a legal code called the Yasa, promoted religious freedom across his empire, outlawed the kidnapping and selling of women, and created the first international postal system. He connected the East to the West, revitalizing the Silk Road and shaping the modern world we live in today. Not bad for a starving kid who was left in the snow to die. What do you think was Genghis Khan's greatest military advantage? Let me know down in the comments. If you love this deep dive, hit that like button and subscribe for more history that feels like a movie. See you in the next one.